So we're continuing our series, FCC at the movies, although today we're not going to talk about a movie. We're going to instead talk about food. So I have a few questions for you. Share this at your tables. What is your favorite fine dining meal? Talk about that at your tables. If you're online with us, put it in chat. Some of you might be saying lobster thermidor, or for me it's a steak, well cooked medium. Some like medium rare, some like blue. Medium is my choice. Maybe your favorite fine dining meal is a deconstructed salad, whatever that is. How about this? Share at your tables, what is your comfort food? What is your comfort food? Mine is right there. Spaghetti bolognese. Especially my bolognese. I make my own. But, you know, meatballs in a pinch, always good. How about your go-to recipe? What is your go-to recipe? Share that at your table. If you don't know which one it is, it's the cookbook with the most splatters on it. It's a recipe that is filled with the most spilt vegetable oil or flour all over it. That's your go-to recipe. Each of those meals, I bet you, each of those meals contains at least one of 4 core components: salt, fat, acid, or heat. Those are 4 core components of any meal, and that is the basis of the series we're looking at in a cookbook by Samin Nosrat called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Today, I want us to explore together, to get hungry together, as we dive into what the Bible has to say about food, how food helps us worship God, how food helps us build community, help those around us, and celebrate our cultural diversity. And we have a guest speaker as well a little bit later. So let's journey together into salt, fat, acid, heat.
I've spent my entire life in pursuit of flavor. I've traveled the world to explore the things that define good cooking.
Let me get some forks.
No matter where I go, the same elements make food delicious.
You're laughing and crying. Laughing and crying. That's pretty much the story of my life.
Salt, fat, acid, and heat. Just 4 basic elements can make or break a dish. The more I travel and taste the different cuisines of the world,
Wow, muy dulces.
the more I realize that good cooking is universal.
This is my... It's so spicy.
Drink some beer. You okay?
Have you ever made short ribs?
Never.
And this is such a good lesson. It's a flavor bomb in your mouth.
It's so good. I'm just going to live here now. Eat cheese and butter until I die.
Be thoughtful. Wow, be curious. Good cooking is within reach for everyone.
Good cooking is within reach for everyone. Now, you may not believe that. You might question your ability to cook, and I want to encourage you. We can learn to cook together. I'm hoping at the end of this you'll be encouraged to try something. I know cooking is scary, but it can be enjoyable. It can be fun. You need to know that my family has endured the lessons of cooking that I've had to go through. When Ingrid and I were first married, in kind of the first couple of years, I used to love playing with making sauces. They weren't good. Somehow I was able to create a sauce that was too salty, too sweet, too savory, all at the same time. It's like a genius level sauce. But it was terrible. Ingrid just ate it. And 2 days later said, yeah, that's not a good one. Don't redo that. You know what? I couldn't even redo it because I was just throwing things in. But you go through this journey where you just learn, you try, and you expand, and you find what you're good at. You find what people enjoy. You probably, like we at our home, have a shelf filled with cookbooks or multiple shelves filled with cookbooks. What if you could master those basics of salt, fat, acid, and heat? What if you could find a way to learn about them and put them together? Well, Samin Nosrat teaches that in this 4-week documentary on Netflix. And it's a great show to look at. Her cookbook is even better. It's amazing. So I want you to meet Samin Nosrat and learn just a bit about who she is.
I've spent my entire life in pursuit of flavor. Starting at the legendary Chez Panisse, I've been cooking, teaching, and writing about food for 18 years.
You have to taste what you're about to cook with. You have to look at it, smell it, touch it.
I've traveled the world, tasting everything. And what I've discovered is that the secret to good cooking is hiding in plain sight. Just 4 basic elements can make or break a dish: salt, fat, acid, and heat. Commit to mastering them, and you can become not only a good cook, but a great one.
So we can learn to cook together. That's what we'll do. And part of what we'll do in this journey is not only just learn to cook together, we will learn to explore what the Bible has to say about food. But it's around those 4 elements: salt, fat, acid, heat. It's a 4-part series. You can watch them in any order. I started watching the fat one first. That's the one I wanted to know about. It took me to a little bit of my heritage, to Italy. I had no idea how much fat is in just about all the food we eat and how amazing it is. But we can do this together. So let's meet those elements. Let's explore the different elements. And as you watch this, you'll notice that what Simone does is she goes to the cultures that are known for those ingredients. She goes to those elements where they're popular. So salt is discovering Japan, fat discovering Italy, acid discovering Mexico, and heat is discovering home. So have a look at these elements and let's dive in together.
Salt. It's fundamental to all good cooking. It enhances flavor, and it even makes food taste more like itself. In short, salt brings food to life. Learn to use it well, and your food will taste great. Fat. It's nothing short of a miracle. Fat is flavor. Fat is texture. Fat adds its own unique flavor to a dish, and it can amplify the other flavors in a recipe. Simply put, fat makes food delicious. And one of the most important things any cook can learn is how to harness its magic. Acid. It's the pucker in a lemon, the sour in sour cream, the tart in cranberry sauce. It literally makes mouths water. Acid brightens food and creates contrast. Most importantly, acid does the absolutely necessary job of balancing flavors, which makes it indispensable to cooking delicious food. Heat. It's the element of transformation. Heat takes food from raw to cooked, flabby to firm, pale to golden brown. Sizzles, splatters, crackles, steam, and aromas are all the results of applying heat to food. And once you understand how heat works, you can be confident that whatever you cook will taste great.
My mouth is watering so much. Are you hungry yet? These episodes changed how I cooked. The heat one changed how I grill. The salt taught me about different types of salt to buy. It was just amazing, and it introduced me to food in a different way. So why would we do a series on food during the summer movie series? Well, it's because of this simple reality. When we eat, we get to worship God and build community. The Bible is filled with food images describing not only just the literal food, but the metaphors and similes that they are representing. Like, for example, this. Food is a gift from God. Genesis 1 opens up with that. Look, God says, I've given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth and all the fruit trees for your food. And I have given you every green plant as food for all the wild animals, the birds in the sky, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, everything that is life. Food is a gift from God. And so when we gather at the table, we need to move from one reaction to another when we think about food as a gift. It's the reaction of ew to yay. I think every parent here would want their child to not do the ew, we're eating that, and instead have the yay, let's eat this together. That's the opportunity we have when we think of food as a gift from God. And all food is a gift from God. Even pineapple. Inside joke, in our house, I don't like pineapple, Ingrid loves it, but the Bible says all food is a gift from God. So okay, even pineapple, just not on pizza. Anyway, let's move on. But food in the Bible is also used as a way to welcome people. It's an act of hospitality, generosity, and welcome. These four elements are contained within an encounter in the Bible where a woman whose husband had died, whose mother-in-law and her were so poor they had to leave the area where they were and go back to their homeland, and they became effectively beggars who would walk through fields and pick up whatever was left from the harvesters. They were begging and eating the scraps of others. And in this encounter, they encounter a man, the owner of the field, who welcomes them in with an act of hospitality. The man's name is Boaz, and the woman is Ruth. At lunchtime, at mealtime, Boaz says to her, come over here, have some bread, and dip it in the wine vinegar. Bread, salt, fat, heat, wine vinegar, acid. And this is a cultural way of welcoming her in. And out of that, there becomes a conversation that leads ultimately to marriage for Ruth and Boaz. But there's this act of welcome and generosity and hospitality in Ruth 2:14 is where that's from. The Bible also talks about food as a metaphor for worship. Right in the beginning, in Genesis, we hear about Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock, and he sacrifices it on an altar in worship to God. That is captured later on in Leviticus, where the priest is told to take the offerings from people and burn them on the altar as a food offering, a pleasing aroma. And please notice who gets the fat. All the fat is the Lord's. Fat is where there's flavor. Fat is where... I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, food is a metaphor for worship. It's used as worship in giving it back to God. It also is used as a metaphor for good and evil. At Christmas time, we quote a well-known passage from Isaiah. This is the passage. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. But the very next verse describes what this Emmanuel will do. He will eat sour milk and honey, which will help him know how to reject evil and choose what is right. Food, a metaphor for good and evil, and how to understand that. It's just how the Bible begins to interpret this. Food is a metaphor for Christian work. You are the salt of the earth. Did you catch what she said about salt? It makes food taste more like itself. It enhances flavor. It enhances the experience. Christians, you are the salt of the earth. You get to make the community in which you are be better, taste more like it should. You get to enhance that and alter that. So you are the salt of the earth. There's all these metaphors and images in the Bible, and one of them is the fact that all food fits. There are three passages that pull this out. In Mark records Jesus talking about food and what's unclean. For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, the food that people eat, and then out of the body. And he ends by saying, in saying this, describing that what you eat isn't unclean, Jesus declared all foods clean. Well, Luke picked up on this in Acts when he records Peter having a vision, and a voice speaks to Peter a second time, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. All food fits. Or this, from Romans, I'm convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean in itself. All food is clean. All food is good. All food fits. But why should you believe me? I'm just a pastor. So I'm going to ask a pediatric dietitian who you know pretty well, Chantel Arnson, to talk about how all food fits.
Good morning. So, I must first say to you, vegetables are a must on a diet. I suggest carrot cake, zucchini bread, and pumpkin pie. So, I actually, as a dietitian, fully endorse these foods, that they can be part of a healthy diet pattern. So can lots of foods, fruits, vegetables. We talk about lean meats and plant-based proteins and all different array of carbohydrates, from rice to pasta and different kinds of fats. All of these foods can fit into a healthy diet pattern. I work as a pediatric dietitian, and I work specifically with children who have kidney disease. And it is not uncommon for a doctor to tell a person with kidney disease that they need to limit the foods that they're eating in their diet because their kidneys can't process it, their blood levels rise, and it can become very dangerous. And so it's often that parents will come to me and say, my kid is really worried about what you're going to tell them today about what they can't eat. And I automatically say, don't worry about it, because there's not anything that I'm going to tell them that they can't eat. There's nothing that's forbidden. Because all foods can fit in a healthy diet pattern, even for a person with kidney disease. Now, I don't tell them that they can eat these foods with abandon. I don't say just do whatever you want. It's often, okay, well, you can eat that, but maybe not 7 days a week, maybe 1 day a week. And you can eat that, but maybe not 3 or 4 cups of it, maybe 1 cup. So we do limit it, but all these foods can still fit in their diet. And so when I was thinking about how do all foods fit in relationship to salt, fat, acid, heat, and I thought about the different countries that Samin goes to and how the components of foods around the world are the same. There's carbohydrate, there's protein, and there's fat in any food. Combinations of those things: chicken has protein and has fat, vegetables and fruits have fiber and vitamins and minerals, and all these combinations are found in different foods, but collectively around the world, they're found in all of our foods, no matter what the foods are. So she goes to visit these different countries. And I thought about what happens in the rest of the world. How do these combinations of component foods or food components fit in our diet? So I came across this book. It's called Hungry Planet: What the World Eats. Photos by Peter Menzel, written by Faith DeLucio back in 2005. They went around the world and they took pictures of families and what they eat in a week. This is a family from Mali. I absolutely adore this picture because it all seems so unfamiliar, because it's not packaged the way we are normally seeing it packaged in our grocery stores. But what I do know on this mat here is that they're eating grains, and they're eating corn, and there's dried fish, and there's fresh vegetable. And the core components of these foods are the same: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And they are being nourished for an entire week on this food. This is a family from France. And similarly, some of these things start to look a little bit more familiar to us, but there are things on this table that we're not familiar with. And yet the core components of their food is still the same: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. This is a family from Kuwait, and you see this beautiful spread of fresh fruits and vegetables at the back, which we are familiar with. And some things on the table that are packages that look familiar, but there are definitely things on that table that are not familiar to us. And yet, the core components of the foods are the same: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. This can play out across the world. And when I thought about this, when I was looking at these pictures, I thought, the creativity of God. Around the globe, He has provided the same core components of foods in all different ways. So it doesn't look the same in Kuwait. It doesn't look the same in Mali, but it's the same core components, and He's nourishing people around the globe in different ways. We're putting different food components together. We're putting different flavors together. We're putting different textures together, and yet they're all nourishing us in exactly the same way. And then I thought, beyond geography, beyond the core components of foods, food is culture. It's part of who we are. It's personal. It's meaningful. If I come to you and I say, "What are you eating? That looks disgusting," I'm probably going to hurt your feelings, and I'm being horribly rude. But if I come to you and I say, "That looks amazing," you might say, "Would you like to try some?" because you want to invite me in to the moment that you're having. You want to invite me into this experience that you're having with food. There's a well-known Italian-American chef, Lidia Bastianich, and she is quoted as saying, "Food is culture. Food is an identity, a footprint of who you are." And I feel like that is so true. Food is part of our culture. Think about holidays. My favorite holiday, I call it the food holiday, is Thanksgiving. And now all of you are thinking about turkey and dressing and all of the things that come along with it because it's part of our food culture. 4th of July, barbecue. Christmas in my household, my mom is Mexican. Christmas in our household means we make homemade tamales. We are elbow deep in dough. It takes hours. We laugh. We have fun. But I also think about making stacks of Christmas cookies with my kids and decorating gingerbread people and sugar cookies. The laughter, the fun, because food brings us together. One thing that I so admire and appreciate about Samin in these videos is that she goes into these cultures. She is so respectful of the culture. She goes in and recognizes and realizes that they are sharing something very special with her. She appreciates the beauty of the people and the beauty of the foods that they're sharing. And instead of the cultural food differences being a barrier, the food differences are a bridge. And she gets to walk in and experience something. We all need this food, but it's different. And she gets to experience this, and it's a beautiful thing. We have the same opportunity. We live in an area where we have access to all different kinds of cultural foods in the Metro West, in Boston, everywhere. And we have an opportunity to explore. We have an opportunity to be curious about other foods. But I want you to think the next time you go into a restaurant that offers a cultural food that is different than your own, I want you to think about the people. I want you to think about the culture. I want you to think about the culture, the people, the food that is being shared with you, and how special it is for somebody to share something that is so important to them, and you get to participate. We have an opportunity to explore our cultural food differences, knowing that the core components of the foods are exactly the same: proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and they may be prepared differently. They may smell different. They may look different. They may taste different, and that's okay because all foods fit in a healthy diet pattern.
Thank you, Chantel. That was excellent. All food is good, given by God, and we get to use it. So how? How can you use it? How can we use it to determine our experience with food? Because when we eat, we get to worship God and build community. So let's talk about building community for a little bit. Community and food go so hand in hand. When we cook and invite people around, it's a way to expand our community, to include people, to invite them in. In fact, Samin Nosrat says that is the purpose for her cookbook. That is why she did what she did. Listen to how she describes this towards the end of one of her episodes.
For me, cooking has never been about the food. It's about what happens at the table. Making good food accessible is really important to me. And any little way that I can do that, from inviting a bunch of friends over for a simple meal to making them help out in the kitchen when they arrive, just helps make it feel like good cooking is within reach for everyone. My ultimate goal is to make people feel comfortable and taken care of so that they can just enjoy the moment and maybe eventually pass that kindness on to others. Cooking for them, with them, just happens to be the easiest way I can do that.
Vuole passo? Yes. La salvia è bellissima. E all'orto qui verso il prosciutto. Sì.
Anyone can learn to cook and do it well. Be thoughtful, be curious, and use salt, fat, acid, and heat to guide you to delicious food. And if for some reason a dish doesn't turn out well, it's okay. You can always try again tomorrow.
When you gather to eat at home, it's an opportunity to build community. When we sit at a table and pass plates for people to dish up, we have an opportunity to also pass conversation backwards and forwards. What was your day like? What are you struggling with? What do you hope for? What's bringing you joy? We have an opportunity to engage in building that family structure we have. And every meal is an opportunity to add somebody new, to invite somebody to join in, to be a part of that community, which is why in our house, we strongly try to work against sitting in front of the TV and eating. Now, sometimes we do that, but we try to sit at a table. We discourage using phones at the table. We don't always get it right, but we want to build that community. When you do that, you have that opportunity in your family, in your home, to build community. When you eat, you have this opportunity to build community, and you can practice that. We actually do that here as a church. Every Sunday after service, our coffee team has different people provide the snacks, and you get an opportunity to experience that gift from that person. Today happens to be Mama O's Donuts, but we've had Joe Patterson's muffins, we've had cookies from other people, and other people have just participated by picking us up Dunkin' for the day. That's an opportunity for us to just experience the gift of somebody else, which might be a way you can help. Get involved. Talk to Rachel Aluakin. Get involved with the coffee team. Let us experience your cooking and your snacking. It's a great way for us to build community. But it's also why we are going to have a backyard party as a church. We're going to gather together, have a combined service with Hopkinton, and then afterwards we're going to have a backyard party, and we're going to provide games and the space, but you're going to provide the food. We're going to invite you to bring a picnic that you can have and you can eat and share, and potentially the aromas and the experiences will waft as we build this community together. August 13th, save the date. It's going to be a 10:30 service at the Hopkinton campus, and straight after the service, we'll gather for the backyard party, rain or shine. If it's raining, we'll do it indoors. If it's not raining, we'll be outdoors. But come and enjoy this as an opportunity for us to build community together. There's one challenge with this community concept, is that not everybody gets to celebrate food. You see, in Massachusetts, according to the Greater Boston Food Bank, 1 out of 3 Massachusetts residents are food insecure. Food insecure means they don't know where their next meal is coming from. They potentially are going to go to bed hungry or will miss meals because their food is not a secure resource for them. 1 out of 3. That's this whole section of this room. That means that 1 out of 3 children go to bed hungry. We have an opportunity with our food to help people who are food insecure, to get behind it. In fact, our outreach team has put together at the local outreach table, you can go and find all sorts of food. It's food banks, Carol, is that right? And opportunities to serve and help, and you can check that out. But we do this as a church community. We have a team that cooks meals at Grace House. We have Bridge House that does it. We did the Families Helping Families during COVID with buying groceries. But you have this opportunity all the time to help those who might be food insecure. By the way we buy our groceries, by maybe helping somebody else out, by sharing a meal with somebody, by reaching out with the art of neighboring to your community and those around you, to find a way to help people who might be food insecure. So as we celebrate food and we build community, we're aware that others don't have, and so we can get engaged with that. But we also, when we worship, have this opportunity to worship God. And here's a simple way you can worship God with your meals. It's called grace. In the old Christian tradition, to say grace at the table was a way to thank people. It comes from Deuteronomy 8:10. When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. In fact, that's where some of the Presbyterian traditions get that saying grace after the meal is what you do. So you eat, and then you thank God for what you've eaten. It's an interesting approach, and maybe that's something you can do. But don't get hung up on the timing, because here's what Jesus did. At the 5 loaves and 2 fishes miracle that he performed, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Every mealtime, build a pause into your conversation. Just a time when you stop and go, Lord, thank you for what you have given. It's a great way to worship God and to build into that. But then there's another way that you can enjoy God and worship him with your food. We do this as a community together. It's called communion. And we're going to have communion together in just a little bit. But communion is an opportunity for us to take those 4 elements, salt, fat, acid, heat, celebrate them together. Bread, salt, fat, heat. The juice, the acid, and to build community together. Because what happens when we have communion? It's not designed to be a personal thing between you and God. It was actually designed as a communal thing. Whenever the early church gathered at a meal, they would celebrate communion together, taking the elements on the table and reminding themselves of what God had done. In fact, Jesus says, as often as you do that. Now, over time, we like ritual, and we tend to turn those into ritualistic endeavors. So we do communion here kind of once every sermon series. But that doesn't stop you from celebrating communion at your tables, at home, at your time at home, to just pause and go, Jesus, we thank you for what you've done for us through your sacrifice, the bread, your body given for us, the wine, your blood shed for us. And so we will celebrate communion here. But as we close and finish this up, I'd like you to consider one other thing you can do as you leave here, is celebrate with your food. Don't turn eating into something that is just for energy. God gave us variety. He gave us difference. He gave us experience to increase the heat, to decrease it, to change, to flavor. There's opportunities for us to use food to celebrate. In fact, to the Israelite community who were spread all over the new nation, who were invited to come and celebrate that time at the temple when they would give an offering and they would rejoice in the forgiveness that God had given them. Some of them had to travel a long distance, and they couldn't bring their offering with them. So what they were encouraged to do is to take their offering, whatever the food was, turn it into money, and bring the money to the temple. And then, this is what Deuteronomy says, use the money to buy anything you want, cattle, sheep, wine, or beer, anything that looks good to you. You and your family can then feast in the presence of God, your God, and have a good time. Have a good time with your food. Laugh and enjoy and have fun with it. But as you do that, Deuteronomy says, don't forget the Levites. You see, the Levites didn't have access to land. They lived off the generosity of the people around them. As you gather, as you celebrate, don't forget those less fortunate. Have a space for them at your table. Maybe physically by inviting them, or metaphorically by including some way to give towards agencies that help. That's a great way for us to celebrate. In fact, the wisest man who ever lived, who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, his observation on life. This is one of the most common quoted or misquoted scriptures. But here's what it says. So I commend the enjoyment of life, because there's nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. My Greek heart just loves that. Then joy will accompany them in their toil all the days of the life God has given them under the sun. When you come home from a hard day's work, there is nothing better than sitting at a table with good food, with good friends, with people who love you, and eat, drink, and be glad. It's why in my culture, meals are not short affairs. Christmas is a 4-hour-long meal. We don't eat the whole time, but you sit and enjoy that.